I'm seeing more and more people saying, oh, we support Drew. We love Drew's content over Stephanie's. How Drew's content seems more authentic. He's authentically him. He posts about being tired from his job every day, his overnight shift, and then going home to be homeless, because that's relatable.
Where does the money go? The age-old question. I threw together real quick what approximately I think they might make and what they might have in bills. So I don't remember. I swear to God, somebody said Drew makes $24 an hour, but I couldn't remember. So I just Googled the average for his position in his city, and I just chose $22 an hour. The range was like 21 to 30. So we picked 22 for a low estimate. He says he works 40 hours a week plus 5 hours of overtime. Then he claims he door dashes for 10 hours a week. And I looked up the average for his area it was like $20 to $25 an hour or something. So we took the low one again for the 20. And then his weekly should be about $1,000.
Around because we need to have a serious conversation about Drew Jenkins. And no, we are not letting him off the hook just because Stephanie is out here making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Here is the thing that nobody seems to want to say out loud. The whole reason Drew looks like the responsible one is because Stephanie is operating at full chaos mode 24/7. And that is not a personality trait, sis. That is a magic trick. Stand next to someone loud enough and suddenly you look calm. Stand next to someone messy enough and suddenly you look put together. But calm is not a plan. And not Stephanie is not a character reference. That is not how accountability works, and it is certainly not how financial responsibility works when children are involved and the whole situation is being watched by everyone. Drew has really been out here serving that exhausted provider aesthetic, overnight shifts, tired eyes, the whole I am doing my best and I am holding this family together energy, and a big portion of the audience has absolutely eaten it up without asking the follow-up questions. And look, nobody is out here dismissing hard work. Working nights is genuinely rough. Long shifts are draining. Coming home exhausted after carrying physical and financial pressure is real, and nobody reasonable is going to pretend otherwise. But here is where the appreciation has to pause for a second, because being tired after a shift does not automatically make someone the responsible adult in the room. A reflective vest is not a halo. Looking drained after work while the family remains stuck in the exact same situation week after week, month after month, is not leadership. That is just existing with better public relations than your partner. And when you really start pulling at the threads of this story, the image starts looking less like a hardworking provider and more like very relatable packaging around a situation that has not actually improved. Because here is what people keep glossing over. Drew is not some innocent bystander watching this family drama unfold from a safe and responsible distance. He is not the neighbor who looks on with a concerned expression while someone else makes bad decisions. He is fully inside this situation. He stays in it. He funds it. He participates in the decisions that keep it going. He explains things after they have already gone sideways and then waits for the audience to feel reassured.
Being a stay-at-motel mom. My problem with this is, I think that's what Stephanie is banking on. She's banking on that you guys like Drew more, so she will stop working as hard. She knows we don't want her on here. Drew is never leaving Stephanie. I would support Drew if he left Stephanie. That is the only time I would support somebody leaving somebody high and dry. Stephanie does what she does and continues to not make any motivation for her life because she has Drew. Drew signs and co-signs all of her bullshit. Now, y'all are gonna like Drew and comment on his shit, get him monetized, get all of this income coming in for them. You know what's gonna happen? Drew's gonna quit his job. Stop paying child support again. Remember, he abandoned his first child and stopped paying child support. Don't forget what he did. He co-signed all of this. You've heard him be mean to the kids. He's no better. He sits and co-signs all of this. Remember, he watches this all happen and he is okay with it. I still wouldn't actually actively support him because you're a bum. Drew's just a bum. But I would support him leaving Stephanie. Yeah. Don't think just because we hate Stephanie, we're gonna go jump to support Drew now. Come on, guys, get your head out of your...
And somehow, every single time, a portion of the audience does feel reassured, because at least he explained it calmly. At least he did not post a meltdown. At least he seems aware of the problem. But awareness without urgency is not leadership either. Knowing what the problem is and continuing to let it sit is not the same as addressing it. And that distinction matters enormously when you look at the full picture of what has been going on with this family. Now, let us get into the part that sent the internet into full investigation mode, because the money conversation cannot be avoided any longer, and Drew does not get a pass on it just because he works overnight. He is not being discussed as someone with zero income or no means of contributing. He works. He reportedly pulls extra shifts. There is allegedly additional hustle layered on top of the regular schedule. So when the family continues to look financially stuck, despite all of that consistent labor, the follow-up question becomes impossible to ignore. Where is the money going? That is not an aggressive question. That is not a personal attack. That is just the most logical thing to ask when someone presents themselves as a steady provider. But stability is nowhere to be found in the actual outcome. Food assistance is reportedly part of the picture, which in theory should free up some of the cash that would otherwise go toward groceries and allow it to be redirected towards something more permanent. Transportation costs are real, phone bills are real, child support obligations are real, laundry costs money. Gas costs money, random household items add up faster than anyone wants to admit. And yes, we have all stood in a grocery store holding one bag that somehow cost $47 and contained nothing that could actually be assembled into a full dinner. Life is expensive. Nobody is pretending otherwise. But when you account for all of those expenses, and there is still no visible movement towards stable housing, no savings trajectory that anyone can point to, no sign that the budget is being used as a weapon against the crisis rather than just a way to survive another 7 days, something is happening between the paycheck and the outcome. And whatever that something is, Drew does not get to float above it looking unbothered and relatable while everyone else asks the hard questions.
Stephanie is hard to guesstimate, especially where she lost Facebook. So she hasn't really been posting. So, I mean, I would say before it was probably at least $1,000 a month, but now she's not really doing anything. So I don't see her really clearing that at all, but we're going to leave that anyway. It's hard to make money when you only post once a week and this is your job. And then I can't really remember exactly some of the bills, so please chime in down below if you have better numbers or remember other things that I forgot. But after Wick and Snap, I just said maybe about $100 a week in groceries of, like, you know, stuff that didn't get paid for with those things. I don't really know what they might pay for their phone bills. I just said about $100 a phone. I couldn't remember who said, if they said their car was $900 a month or if people said their car was $900 a month. So I just went with that. And then the Jetta gets 30 miles to the gallon. I estimated 30 miles a day between work and DoorDash. Could be more, could be less, for about $200 a month. And I just averaged $4.50 a gallon because right now it's very unpredictable. Laundry, I looked at a couple different ones in the area. The average is like $8 to $10 for like the super mega loads. So I went with this one that I found where they have a 6 load washer that holds 60 pounds. And then you dry it, and it was quarter dryers or whatever. So like, I think it was like 6 minutes a quarter. So about $10 to wash and dry it, times should be twice a week if she was properly washing all her clothes and everything. So about $100 a month or so. I don't really know exactly what subscriptions they have, but she does pay for that little check mark on Instagram. And then, you know, I know they have, I think, Netflix and maybe Disney Plus. So I just eyeballed that. And then he pays a little bit more than $300 in child support, but I like round numbers, so I just said $300. And then $100 for miscellaneous cleaning supplies, whatever, stupid stuff, who knows. So even if they had more bills than this and whatever, they're still walking away with like $3,000 every month. Where is it? Where is it? You have next to no bills and all this money coming in, mostly from Drew. Drew, where's all your money going? Stephanie's not the breadwinner anymore. It looks like you are. So where's your money going? Where? My family makes less than yours, and we can save 20% of our income a week. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're blowing it all.
He is the breadwinner in the praise sections of the conversation, which means he is the breadwinner in the audit sections too. That is how accountability works. You do not get to claim credit for the income without taking responsibility for where it lands. And then there is the motel. Oh, the motel. Buckle in, because this is where the story goes from concerning to genuinely cinematic. Stephanie has stated that she and Drew have been covering the cost of the motel accommodation themselves without relying on housing vouchers out of their own pockets, which means Drew's income is directly tied to that bill. His money is part of it. His choices are part of it. And for those who have been quietly doing the math at home, the monthly cost of this motel situation reportedly sits in the same ballpark as actual rent for an actual apartment with actual walls that belong to you and an actual address that is not a hospitality establishment.
Stephanie was active in her sub-only chat today, and she says that they have been paying for the motel this whole entire time. She says that they have not been receiving vouchers.
Like 80-90% of the people that we've seen with kids in this motel had been on vouchers, and Drew and I paid for everything out of pocket. And yes, I do have all the receipts that people want to act like we don't have.
And do you guys remember I called? I called and got the price of the room, and I did the math. And it was like stupid expensive.
Just one room.
Okay. It's $81.99 plus tax.
So at $81 per night, that is $2,465 per month. And from March 18th, when you guys moved to the motel room, when you were evicted, to February 19th, 2026, today, almost a year, the grand total at $81 per night is $27,378.
Which means that over several months of this arrangement, the cumulative total could represent the kind of money that would have covered a deposit, first month's rent, last month's rent, moving costs, and a celebratory meal on the first night in a real home. Instead, the family is still in the motel, still explaining, still updating, still in the same place they were months ago. A motel is emergency housing. It is a pause button. It is a landing pad for when things go wrong and you need somewhere to be while you figure out the next step. But when temporary becomes a multi-month situation, when the bill starts looking like luxury rent without any of the luxury, when the updates keep coming and the timeline keeps stretching and there is still no concrete plan visible to anyone watching, we have left rough patch territory and entered something that looks a lot more like a pattern. A deliberate, recurring, self-sustaining pattern of crisis management that never actually resolves the crisis. And Drew did not wander into that pattern accidentally. He has been helping fund it, month after month, while presenting himself as someone who is working towards something better. That tension between the image and the math is exactly what makes this story so frustrating to watch. Then came the car update, which was supposed to feel like a win, and instead opened up a whole new set of questions that nobody asked for but everybody needed answered. The repair was framed as a responsible action, a practical necessity handled by a man who understands what his family needs to function. And fine, yes, transportation is essential, especially when income depends on being able to drive. Nobody reasonable is going to sit here and argue that fixing a car is a bad thing. But then the backstory came out. Drew acknowledged in his own account that the vehicle had been dealing with warning lights and performance issues for a significant period of time. Not a sudden breakdown that appeared without warning on a random morning. Not a surprise mechanical failure that nobody could have anticipated. A known, ongoing, visible problem that had been sitting there for a long time, blinking and signaling and asking for attention, while the family continued to use the vehicle for work and daily life and all the things that depend on having reliable transportation. And once the part was sourced and the mechanic actually got to work on it, the repair did not take very long at all.
All right, guys, I'm sure you know our check engine light has been on for quite a long time now, close to over a year, as well as our EPC light, which is our electronic protection control, which was tossing our car into limp mode. Thankfully, we have the safety features we have on the car, so we're still able to drive the car up to a certain point a couple weeks ago when the TPI went out. So we shout out to my boy. He had me find a part, order the part, and he go and set it up right and got her fixed and put her in there and got some other codes and stuff like that cleaned up that was hindering the performance of the car. And now she's 1,000% on the road. And so again, shout out to my boy. I'm not going to put his name out there because I'm not sure if he wants his business out there, but he's a really good guy, solid mechanic. He got this done in about 30 to 45 minutes, buttoned everything up, took it for a test drive, plugged up his scan reader and all type of jazz these mechanics do. Shout out to him again. Yeah, he fixed her up.
Which means the delay was not about the complexity of the job. It was about prioritization. A vehicle essential to employment, to family mobility, to the income that the whole responsible provider image is built around, was allowed to sit with known issues for an extended period before it became urgent enough to address. And then when it was finally fixed, it got packaged as a moment of accountability, a proof of responsibility, a reason for the audience to feel better about the direction things are heading. But fixing a problem late is not the same as handling it well. Showing up with the fire extinguisher after the kitchen has been filling with smoke for months is not a safety story. It is a delay story with better ending energy. And the most frustrating part of all of this is the standard that keeps being applied when people defend Drew Jenkins in these conversations. The argument is always some version of the same thing. At least he is not Stephanie. At least he works. At least he explains things without turning every update into a public breakdown. And yes, technically, all of those things are true. But technically true is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because the bar that Drew is being measured against is not a reasonable standard for an adult with children who is presenting himself as a provider. The bar is Stephanie's behavior, and that bar is not just low. That bar is subterranean. That bar has been underground so long it has developed its own ecosystem. The actual standard, the one that matters when there are children living inside the outcome of these adult decisions, is whether those kids are in stable housing. Whether the consistent income is being used to build something instead of just surviving another week in a motel. Whether known problems are being addressed before they turn into public explanations. Whether the adults making the decisions are actually moving the family forward or just managing the appearance of trying to do so. By those measures, the narrative that Drew Jenkins is the responsible one, the stable one, the adult in the room, starts developing some very significant cracks, because the children in this situation are not living in a spreadsheet or a comment section or an update post. They are living in the outcome. The instability is their daily environment. The transient setup is their normal. The cycle of crisis and explanation and temporary fix and new crisis is the rhythm of their lives. And they do not need a well-delivered, calm, articulate explanation for why things are still hard. They need the adults around them to make the hard choices even when it is inconvenient, even when it costs something, even when it requires addressing a problem before it becomes an emergency. A family can have money coming in consistently and still not build anything if the money keeps disappearing into a holding pattern instead of being directed towards something real. That is what makes this story so genuinely sad underneath all the drama and the receipts and the budget math. So no, Drew Jenkins does not get a trophy for clocking in and looking exhausted. Plenty of parents are exhausted. Plenty of parents work long hours and overnight shifts and still manage to prioritize a lease over a motel, a repair before the warning lights become a crisis, a savings plan before the situation becomes a public audit. Being the quieter person in a loud situation is not the same as being the responsible one. Having a job is not the same as having a plan. And explaining a problem clearly and calmly after it has been allowed to fester is not the same as preventing it from festering in the first place. Drew Jenkins is not the clean escape route in this story. He is not standing outside the chaos with a clipboard and a lease agreement and a plan that is 3 steps ahead of the current crisis. He is inside it every single day, spending inside it and staying inside it, and helping it continue to function as a cycle rather than moving it toward a resolution. The money questions are entirely fair. The motel math is entirely fair. The car situation is entirely fair. The concern for the children at the center of all of it is more than fair. Employment does not erase financial dysfunction. A calm delivery does not cancel out bad priorities, and fixing the car eventually does not turn months of delay into a leadership moment no matter how the update is framed. Drew might not be the loudest problem in this story, but he is still very much in the room. He is still participating. He is still funding the cycle, and he is still benefiting from the collective need. People have to believe that at least one adult in this situation has it figured out. But the receipts, as they always do, are telling a different story. And that story is getting harder and harder to look away from.